welcome to the Lever Movement podcast. I'm your host, Brad Miles, co-founder and CEO of Lever. And with me today is a very special guest, Dani Lewis. Dani, thanks for joining.
Thank you for having me, Brad. It's good to be here.
It is really good to be here. A couple days off of your Lake Placid win, which is really
hmm
exciting. How are you feeling?
I'm good. Still a bit sleepy just because it was a hard trip to get to, one, and then get home from, two. And then of course, doing an Ironman in the middle of all of it. So I'm still catching up on some sleep.
That's good. Yeah, I liked your Instagram post maybe it was a couple weeks ago. Maybe it was after Roth when you had a great race there, and it was like the way that you recover after an Ironman. I loved
hmm
it. You just like replace a bike ride with a nap. It's
Yeah, it
perfect.
is.
Eat a lot of food and nap a lot. So, well, very good. Yeah, like I said, thanks for joining. Yeah, has it been a pretty like crazy week? I mean, obviously with the travel, but have you been on podcasts? Have you been a lot of people reaching out? What's that been
Yeah,
like?
it actually has been really busy, and I've always been planning on taking this week off from training because just to do I usually do like a mid-year break anyways. And I've been looking forward to like getting outside, doing some hiking, maybe some paddle boarding, go float the river. And now I'm like, hey, come on my podcast. Hey, do this, do that, like, okay, so my week is like flying by and I'm not outside. But it's okay. No, it's been good. It's been busy for sure. You're my second podcast today, and I have another one scheduled. So yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, that's just stardom. You win a race and everyone wants to talk.
Yeah, it's all good. I like talking to people. So
Yeah, that's good. Well, most people, I'd say everybody doesn't know this, but we kind of go back a little over a decade and a half.
Mhm. We
Um,
do.
yeah, so we both ran at Baylor University.
Mhm.
You graduated the year before I came in, um, which is super exciting. I'm talking to
I
another
know.
Baylor Bear.
I know. Sick and Bears. It was so cool. And I learned that you were involved with Lever and just seeing all that you've done in that field and in our sport has just been really cool to watch you kind of grow also.
I appreciate that. Yeah. Do you miss the Baylor track years at all?
It definitely had its highlights. I do miss kind of the team environment. That's something that you don't really get as a triathlete,
Mhm.
which is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and even from a track standpoint too. Obviously, the Olympics are starting here in a few days, and
Mhm.
you ran in the Olympic trials in 2008.
Well,
Well,
no, I fractured my heel just before, so I didn't get to compete.
all
I
right.
know. It was
Okay.
super bummer.
So qualified for the Olympic trials. And
There you go.
yeah. Okay. Well, you're still super fantastic of an athlete, and you've been bouncing around and not bouncing around because you wanted to, kind of because you had to through different sports from
hmm
track, and then you got into the cycling world, became a professional cyclist, and now you're tearing it up in the triathlon series.
Yeah, just one thing leads to another. Yeah, it's been quite a roller coaster, but I'm here and yeah, thriving in this sport.
Yeah, just curious on that bit. Because I feel like just talking to people and just obviously reading books and it seems like true champions are born when they can pivot well, when life kind of hands them something and they don't look at it as a defeat, but they look at it as a chance for growth. I feel like I've seen that in your story a ton. Can you kind of just share a bit about, the last, let's call it 15 years or so, about, the obviously the obstacles that you've gone through just to be where you're at today?
Absolutely. And yeah, I don't know I mean, maybe you could call it pivoting well. I don't know that I always did pivot well. I'll just kind of dive into it a little bit. So, let's see here. I wanted to run after college. I was on a good track to be able to do that. But I ended up getting sick my senior year, actually mono and a vitamin D deficiency. And it really wiped me out. I wanted to redshirt my senior year and I wanted to talk to coach and it just at the time it wasn't possible because he wasn't expecting that and he like funds had already gone certain places to other people and so it just wasn't really a good option for me. And so that just kind of like ended my running, which was really tough. Yeah, because like my last collegiate running race was an indoor meet at the University of Arkansas, and I ended up running a mile, and I was slower than I ran in high school,
Hmm.
and it was just awful. Like, and so to like to end your running career like that, and like not knowing why, because I felt like I was running really fast. I felt like world record pace, you know, and I came off the track. I'm like, oh my gosh, it was so hard, but it was so slow, and like, yeah, it just wasn't good. Um, at that point, we didn't really know what was going on. Um, and then I had some doctor's appointments and stuff, and we eventually figured it out. But yeah, I ended up just kind of getting really depressed after that. And I can go in a little bit of detail with you because you're kind of familiar with the running scene there at Baylor and stuff. But I started avoiding people. I avoided the track program. I wouldn't even drive past the track there on Clay. I wouldn't
Hmm.
even, because that was like the faster way to go home, but I wouldn't even drive past the
Yeah.
track because I didn't want to be reminded about some of the pain that I had. And I ended up gaining like 50 pounds in a year. And part of it is like my body fat had gotten so low in college, and it wasn't like a really purposeful thing, but when you're in a competitive environment and you're kind of eyeballing other people and seeing what this person's doing, what I'm doing, and you want to, I don't know,
Hmm.
you don't always make the best choices. And so um we I talked to some of the girls after the fact, and we kind of agreed that we didn't have like eating disorders, but rather just like disordered eating,
Hmm.
if
Hmm.
that makes sense. Go ahead.
Yeah. I mean, did it feel like at that point, did it just feel like from a pressure standpoint, like that's what you needed to do to compete at the level you wanted to compete at in a
I
way?
don't, well, like we had a really competitive team. We had a really strong
Hmm.
kind of mid to distance team at the time. And we all like had this kind of, it seemed like a healthy competition. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to be better than this person or that person. It wasn't like mean competition. We all wanted each other to thrive and excel. Um, maybe there were some like undertones of it. I think we always thought that we did a good job of not having like issues, but yeah, it wasn't like explicit, like, oh, you have to weigh this or we're doing weigh-ins now. Like there was never any of that because we had heard of some teams that they did have to do weekly weigh-ins, and like they were only allowed to eat what they could fit into a bowl.
Wow.
Like
Yeah.
that wasn't us, and we were
Mhm.
proud that wasn't us. But when you're just in an environment, I don't know, you just kind of like feed off of each other in a way that wasn't always positive, if that makes sense.
Oh, I mean, 100%. I feel like that's a sport specifically, and you know me, like I don't have the body type of a distance runner, like
Mhm.
a pure distance runner. Like I'm 5'8". And I weigh the same as the guy on my team that was 6'4". Like that is just an interest, like and I don't have his stride length. But, so yes, a weight definitely comes into play a lot in the sport.
Mhm.
For sure. You're always thinking about it just because I feel like you've also always been told that the lighter you are, the
Yeah.
faster you'll run.
Well, and there is merit to that to an extent, right? I mean,
Right.
like it's it makes sense. There's some science behind it, right? So you like you're all, but there's a fine line. Elite distance runners, you have to flirt with this fine line to be your best, but it's a dangerous line to flirt with. And once you go under, you can cause lasting damage. And I think I was actually recently just talking about this. I think that you just have to approach it very objectively and kind of try to leave this like emotion out of it. You can't really tie your worth to numbers either. It's just very like right now, for example, about I'm just shy of 5'10", and I know like what my weight needs to be the strongest version of myself. And now I'm like 10 pounds heavier than I was in college, but I also am like a triathlete, which you need a
Mhm.
lot more muscles than you do as like a runner.
Mhm.
And I know that where I am, like I'm usually like plus or minus 2 pounds, right? But if I go under this this weight, then I can't stay there very long. Like that might be good for like world championship type season,
Mhm.
but you just cannot stay there very long for me. Otherwise, I risk getting like just burnt out, overtrained, just kind of fatigued, and just not in a good place.
Mhm. Yeah, it is a fine line, and unfortunately, I feel like a lot of it too is you find out too late that you were crossing the line.
You do, and that's something. Unfortunately, you just have to learn what's right for you. Um, it's it's not the same for everybody. Everybody is unique. They know what's best for them, but yeah, sometimes it takes a hard lesson to learn where that is for you. And I think for myself, I learned that, like I was saying, in college, and my body fat percentage got pretty low. I ended up getting sick, took a year off, and then I think when I stopped running and stopped eating well, I mean, I was eating a lot because I was like depressed. Um, I ended up gaining a whole bunch of weight in a year, and yeah, and then I think there was like this rebound effect that my body did. It was like, okay, like I'm just going to hold on to all these resources because I had been deprived for so long.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, and then good.
Oh, I was just gonna say, yeah, so, like, coming from there, um, what was kind of the sign, signal to just kinda pursue sport again?
Yeah, so honestly, it was kind of like a light bulb moment one day. I was just at home, and truly, it just felt like a light switch, and I just realized, I can do whatever I want to do if I just set my mind to do it. And I know that sounds a little cliche and all, but like it was true and it resonated with me. And I gave myself a strict like eating plan, and a workout plan. I put up a graph in my um, bathroom so I could kind of like see the progress of my weight kind of going to a healthier place. And then got a bike just to get myself back into shape. I thought at that point, okay, I'm going to start pursuing triathlon. I actually did a triathlon and did great. I was like, I think second female overall and like first in my age group. I'm like, okay, like I can do this sport. This is good. And then in my training, I actually had a bike accident, um, fractured my shoulder, had to get surgery, and then so I couldn't swim. But then I just started riding my bike more. And then over the course of just a couple of years, ended up on this domestic elite team and was traveling around the country racing with them.
That's really cool. Were you swimming at all at that point or just cycling?
No, yeah, no. Well, when I was like starting to train for a triathlon, I started getting into a pool to try to figure out how to swim.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
it's funny, we also joke that the cross country team at Baylor was like the swim team because we didn't have a swim team and they had us in the pool like a couple of times a week swimming. We were terrible.
I remember those days. Yes, not the most athletic crew in the pool.
No.
That's yeah, that's really funny. So, okay, so when you're elite cycling on the elite cycling team, no swimming and running at that point,
No,
just cycling for a
just
handful of years.
yes, just
Um,
cycling. Mhm.
and then really from there, like what was the nudge to get you back into triathlon?
Well, how do you all right, so, then I had another cycling accident in a race. I was going this is in 2014, going downhill, 40 plus miles an hour. Two guys in front of me were they went shoulder to shoulder trying to hold it up. They eventually hit the deck. I didn't have an out, and I ended up flipping and landing on my back, and I fractured a couple bones in my back. Um,
Um,
and so, that's kind of scary when you're laying on the ground in an immense amount of pain and wondering if you can move your legs. So I actually quit elite cycling at that point. And this is why I say, like, I don't know if I always pivoted the best, but yeah, I decided just to focus on my career. I have a master's degree in public health, and I decided just to focus on my job there. I was working in healthcare and then in public health, and I enjoyed what I was doing. And I figured, I'm just going to go ahead and I can do sport just as what makes me happy and just kind of do things at a local level, no strings attached. Like, this will be good. And then after a few years of kind of like lying to myself that like I still really wanted to be an elite athlete, I decided in 2017, like, okay, you know what? Like we just got to go for it. Like this is my year. This is what I told myself in 2017. I said, this is my year. It's my year to take back what the lies, the doubt, the fears, all of that stole from me, and I'm just going to go for it. And that's the year I ended up winning a few national titles and earned my elite license.
yeah. Yeah, and yeah, 6 years ago, well, I guess that was 7 years ago now. or so. Would you call it like a pretty quick rise to the level that you've been at, or does it feel like it's been a really long journey to get to where you always could see yourself getting to?
Um, Goodness. I feel like it's been fairly gradual over time. I think with our sport, it's not easy. Winning's not easy, right? It doesn't necessarily doesn't come I mean, unless depends on who you are. It doesn't come often. And and I feel like it's kind of like as long as you continuously trend up, you're going in the right direction. Um, but yeah, no, it definitely took me some time, I feel like. And I
Mhm.
don't even feel that I've reached my potential in the sport. Which I don't know if athletes ever really feel that they've reached their potential. But
Mhm.
yeah, no, I still feel like I have a ways to go.
Yeah, and I feel like so. Um, we probably didn't see each other from that 2010 period on for a while, but we ran into each other in Nice in 2019 at
Mhm.
the 70.3 World Championships.
Yes. Uh-huh.
Uh, and I feel like part of the conversation when we talked then was like how far you were driving to the pool just to swim
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
intense. Like that was more of a commute than like most people make like to
Well,
work.
yeah, so for the first couple years of my professional career, I was still working full time, and I had to drive about an hour every day just to get from where I lived to where I worked and where the pool was as well. So my schedule for a few years was basically wake up at 4 o'clock in the morning, be on the road by 4:30, drive to the pool for master's swim, and then be at work by around 8, and then work until lunch and then maybe do a short workout or something over lunch, go back to work, and then after work, try to get in another session if I could, and then drive home and be to bed by 8, 8:30 and just go on repeat. And so that's what it was.
Yeah, and that's hard to really progress well in the sport on a schedule like
Mhm.
that.
It
Um,
is.
and especially, again, as runners with running backgrounds that didn't spend a lot of time in the pool growing up, like swimming is a really different beast than cycling um,
Mhm.
for a runner. So how do you feel like your swim has progressed over the last 6 years? Because probably fair to say it it was significantly like your weakest event, and now it's getting a lot
Yeah.
better.
Well, I was coming out of the water last in every race that I was doing, like just across the board. Doesn't matter what it was, I'd be last out of the water. Now I'm not last out of the water. Now I'm kind of
That's why
like,
I say it's progressing.
I know. It's like midfield, which I'm still giving up a significant amount of time to the leaders, but obviously now is at least getting me to be in contention for podium spots and wins. So that's really positive. Although, yes, I'm still working on it. But when I first started in 2017, I didn't have a clue what to do. I mean, I don't know. I know how to like swim to survive, but like swim to go fast or race, none of that made sense, and I'm still learning, but at least now I have like a good solid understanding of mechanics, what things should look like, what things should feel like. But yeah, it's taken a long time, especially as an adult, trying to train your brain and training that mind body connection and developing new pathways. It's tough for sure.
Mhm. Is the swim all three disciplines for sure are a focus, but would you say you favor one discipline right now from a focus standpoint?
In terms of training or what I feel like I'm better at,
No, yeah, more so
you saying?
training of like
Okay.
what are you really working on to improve? Because like you're first on the bike, Lake Placid, first on the bike, first on the run, and we'll talk about that here in a second. But um, do you see that there is more time to be gained in like the bike or run versus the swim, or like what?
Why are you asking dumb questions? I gave up 15 plus minutes in this swim, so yeah, like
Well,
this
not
swim.
15.
Yes, from Sarah True out of the water, it's like
Okay.
15 damn minutes.
Well, but I would say like the most of the competitors were like less than 5, like around 5.
True. Well, yes, yeah, exactly. And like, so when I came out of the water, my husband actually gave me a time split to Jackie, and that was like 8 minutes out of
Yeah.
the water. And to me, that was more important than the front pack swimmers.
Right. But that's why I asked the
Yeah.
question, because like let's say it's 8 minutes for the
Mhm.
swim. Like, do you feel like you could find 8 minutes on the bike run still?
And on that specific course, yes, I did because I knew that I could ride the hills and run the hills pretty good.
Yeah. Well, it's been really cool. Again, it's been really cool to watch your rise up through, yeah, again, seeing you again for the first time, 2019, and then even what you've been doing from 2019 till now. It's been really cool. Like this season has been really fun to follow you on. Um, and yeah, I'd love to just jump into Roth real quick. I know that was a really exciting race for you,
Yeah.
and a ton of emotion just from just the whole electric environment standpoint. Can
Mhm.
you kind of walk us through that one real quick? And then,
Yeah, I'd love to. I have to ask, are you ever planning on going to Roth?
yes,
Ah, yay!
yes. Hopefully next year. That's the
Okay.
plan.
Yay. Okay, okay, okay. Okay, so I'm so excited for you, and this makes me even more excited to tell you about it. So, anytime someone mentions Roth, I always get like full body chills, just because the experience was amazing. And part of what makes it really cool is that they, the challenge organization actually, well, they do this for professionals, but I believe they even do this for age group athletes. If you ask, but they'll put you in host lodging there because there's not enough hotels or places to stay for athletes. And so the community just really loves this event. And so they bring the athletes into their homes and they just treat them like family. You know, we were there for, oh gosh, 10 days maybe. And the, we were in tears the day we were leaving. The family was, and I was, just because like you just form this emotional connection with them. You cook with them. She taught me how to make these like potato dumplings. She made homemade spetzel, which is
Mm,
like this German pasta
mm,
for me and Andrew. And then yeah, it's just it's a beautiful time to get to know the culture and to meet the people. And then the race itself, I mean, thousands of people just come out and they come from like all over the place. These German villages aren't big, right?
mhm,
When you're riding your bike, it literally takes 60, a big one might be 90 seconds just to navigate through. It's like every maybe it could be 5 to 12 kilometers, you're riding through this tiny little German village. And so there's not that many people that live here. But
mhm,
on race day, there's thousands of people. I'm like, where do you guys come from? Um, so they line the whole swim course. And then on the bike, I mean, the energy is just electric. When I came around on the bike this corner and looked up to Solar Hill, the iconic Solar
mhm,
Hill,
mhm.
and I just saw this massive sea of heads. And I was like, well, I may have said a curse word because it was like, oh my gosh, like that's nuts. And then I immediately started crying. I'm like, what's going on? Why are you crying? Like, pull yourself together. And I think it simply was just because of the energy. Like, it's
Mhm.
just, yeah, it's out of this world. And then the run, I've said it too publicly, is like, I was running so fast, but like I couldn't run any slower because people just kept cheering for me the whole time.
Yeah.
And I was
So
like, I'm
cool.
gonna pay for this. Yeah,
But did you, I mean, you ran a 2:48,
I did.
really impressive. Did you pay for it? Or, I mean, obviously
You
you backed
know,
it up 2 weeks later.
yeah, not really. But I think so. The first over, okay, so it's about 5K out from T2 to the canal. And the canal, getting to the canal is a little bit of rollers, but then the canal is just pancake flat, right? And you're out there for 14 ish miles. And it's or maybe, I don't know, something like that. But it's so easy just to kind of set a rhythm. It's kind of like you just set your cruise control, find your tempo, and just lock it in and hold it in place. But I wasn't expecting the second half of the course to be quite as hilly as it was. There were actually some really long climbs out there. And so I slowed down a little bit on that part. But I also, how the course is situated, wasn't able to get my second. nutrition, my second bottle, until about mile 15, and I really needed it about mile 13. And so I had a kind of a big energy lull midway through the race, as a result. And so once I got that bottle, I was just kind of like taking in a whole bunch to try to like rebound as quickly as possible, and eventually was able to rebound, but that slowed me down a little bit, but that's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you came away with either second or third fastest American?
Yeah, it was third. Yeah,
Third.
I
Okay.
because I was looking at try ratings and Thorson just hadn't updated his list yet because I had forgotten that Jackie she did an 8:19 in Hamburg.
Okay.
So that would have made me third. Mhm.
Okay. I saw both second and third. So yeah, no, that's great. It's a fantastic day. I mean, third all time American is really, really impressive. And then, 2 weeks of recovery, it sounds like,
Mhm.
and
Yep.
then, off to Lake Placid. I mean, you probably weren't home for more than a week.
Oh, it was a short amount of time. I think it was probably right at a week we were home. Mhm.
Okay. So fly out to Lake Placid. Was your body feeling pretty good like the week of Lake Placid?
Yeah, I felt good. I think part of the reason I was able to handle kind of this two full distance races within 2 weeks is just because I have a pretty high training volume as it is, and just consistency over time. I think those two things really helped. But yeah, I was just pretty conservative. There's not, obviously, you're not going to gain anything
Mhm,
within that window, but you can certainly lose, you
mhm.
know, your ability to do well if you try to panic train or, do anything crazy.
Yeah, and you're no stranger to kind of back-to-back races either. You did it
Mhm.
Texas and St. George about 2 weeks
Yes,
apart.
that was one.
That was
Okay.
1 week. Yeah, yeah, no, that's right. That's true. Okay, 1 week, and then a couple weeks to Chattanooga.
Correct.
Yeah, so you knew you had it in you. One thing I'd love to touch on real quick. So obviously, Lake Placid goes really well. You won it. It's awesome.
Mhm.
You did have a fall on the bike, which is probably pretty scary in the moment, but it sounds like you didn't have any pain.
No, just how I had landed, it was kind of just on the right side of my body, just on, I'll just kind of like soft tissue on the big muscles of my back, right?
Mhm,
So thankfully there was no bone or anything involved. When I got back on the bike, I mean, I did kick myself. I was like kicking myself, like, gosh darn it, Danielle. Like, it was such a stupid move,
mhm,
but whatever. And then I just kind of try to suss things out. How are you feeling? Because you do have a lot of adrenaline pumping through your body and you're not sure. I mean, like, I could have had like a finger hanging off and not even had a clue because you're just so jacked on adrenaline when something like that happens. So I did want to be just a bit more conservative the last 20 some miles to the transition area because I still intended to run the marathon. I didn't know how my body was going to feel. And then when I was on the bike, I could tell like my neck was pretty sore. Um, I felt like whiplash basically.
mhm.
But yeah, I went to medical afterwards and just to kind of just double check everything, make sure there was,
That's
you
good.
know, nothing bad. And yeah, I was just, yeah, I'm the most sore that I've ever been after a race, and that was mostly because of that little snafu.
From the crash. Um, and another really great run. So like at 2:52, set the course
Mhm.
record on the run. Flying honestly really close to even splits, which was
Yeah,
shocking. Was that the plan going in? Was that the race plan to even split it or
I wasn't looking at my splits at all or my
wow.
pacing.
Okay.
I just, with the nature of that course, you just can't. Like, it's really fast downhills at the beginning and then just slow trudges back up the
Mhm.
hill. So, okay, so if I go down a hill at 6 minute pace, like, okay, whatever, like I feel fine. But then you're going back up at like 7 minute pace, like, oh, like this is slower than my target pace, but doesn't really, like you just can't like look
Yeah.
at pacing. You have to do everything truly on feel. So my strategy was simply push the downhills and the flats, and then just try to keep relaxed and try to float up the climbs as best as possible.
Yeah. So even splits though, that just kind of more natural from a Ironman marathon for you? Like, is that typical? Because I guess that the reason why I ask is, you've been public about it. So had a couple rough runs earlier this season,
Mhm.
um, and really turned it around the last two races.
Well, I'll say I don't have a lot to compare my marathon splits to be honest. This is, hold on, 2, 3, maybe my sixth, I maybe my sixth full,
Okay.
and I could only have, so besides Roth and Placid, I only had one other full where I had like a decent marathon, and that was Ironman Arizona, which I also ran a 2:52 on that course. Um, but I think I went through halfway at like a 124 or something there. So that wasn't an even split. That was pretty early on in my like Ironman journey.
Mhm.
So yeah, I don't know. I guess maybe it's just who I am as an athlete, just pretty strong and consistent. I think, but the big thing, I think all these athletes are strong and consistent. But for myself, really dialing in nutrition has been a big thing that I've been working on. And so to me, that consistency just speaks to that nutrition strategy is working.
Yeah, and that makes a lot of sense because I've, making sure your body's getting what it needs so that it can
Mhm.
consistently perform really well. Yeah, I think one of your Instagram posts after either Texas or St. George was talking about just like the gut having issues in those races,
Yeah.
and it's hard to run even splits if your gut's off. You can't do
It,
it.
I mean, if you're standing on the side of the course vomiting,
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah, and the time is still going.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. The watch doesn't stop if you stop.
Exactly. Yeah. Sometimes I wish that was a feature of Iron Man, but it never
No.
happens that way. Well, really good. And I think what's been really cool, like I said, the macro progression of you over the last 6, 7 years has been really fun to follow. But also just even in this, I would say like the micro progression from like last year, like coming off of a good season, but end of 2023, you had some injury issues that you're
Yeah.
working through. um like how does, especially the last two races, like how does that feel coming off of what you were going through end of 2023?
It's just really encouraging because like you do stuff in training that indicate that you're ready for a really strong performance. And so to have races that just don't pan out for whatever reason, it just sucks. And so it is validating to have a couple of these performances that have been really solid and are just like, okay, like other people might be surprised, but at the same time, I mean, I'm really not that surprised, right? Because I know like what I'm capable of doing. Um, and I think it's just kind of be the first time people are seeing like, oh, okay, like she's a real athlete, I guess. I don't know.
Mhm.
But last year, so I don't know if, I mean, if you, I know you followed it, but I had some kind of like neuromuscular issue where I'd go out for a long run and literally just be stopped in my tracks and could barely walk anymore just because like the muscle just stopped working. And I'm
Hmm.
like, it was just it was the weirdest thing. I had countless like MRIs. I had an MRI of my brain,
Wow.
of like my lumbar. I mean, so many tests and things done, and everyone was saying, "Oh, you're fine. You're healthy." And I'm like, "Okay,
Mhm.
I'm really happy I don't have a brain tumor. Okay, so okay, that's good, but I really want to know what's wrong with me." Because things just aren't firing properly. Things are shutting down, my brain, my body, things aren't connecting. And so when I went into Kona, I had for like, I don't know, I think it was like 6 or 8 weeks, I guess, prior to Kona, I had done like an average of 10 hours of training a week. And that training was just very light activity, on
Yeah.
like on like the lever, weight reduction
Yeah.
tool on the treadmill, or very easy spinning, just things that didn't really exacerbate or create the issue I was having. And so I started working with a strength coach, Shannon Clausen with Podium Coaching, and she is so good at what she does. Um, but well, I guess so prior to that, the last doctor they had told me it was probably some form of dystonia.
Mm.
So people, I think, because Kara Goucher came out with her journey with dystonia. And so I think that's how people know what that term is. And honestly, I think this is still kind of a weird thing in the medical community. There's not like really great explanations, but it's basically kind of like the mind and the body just aren't really speaking to each other properly. And to this day, do I really like believe like that's what it is. Like, I don't know, because I still kind of deal with this issue. I'm
Mhm.
not I'm not fully 100% there, but I'm also not even I'm way better than I was before.
Mhm.
Um, and so I just try not to give it like too much weight or too much power in what I'm doing. I just still try to focus on like the things that are going well, and dialing that in. And so, anyways, my work with Shannon, the strength side of things, she came here to Boise, to see me and identified some areas where there was some kind of like just connection issues in the body and working on dialing those things in. And that's all of that's been making a really big difference.
Yeah, no, that's great. When did you kind of during that injury, when did you feel like you could get back to, quote unquote normal run training?
Um, probably probably the January-ish, February timeframe.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So kind of kicking off the year and with kind of low volume leading up through, the end of last year and kicking off this year. Yeah, you're 7 months later winning an Ironman, and
Mhm.
I think also your brightest days are still ahead too, which is really exciting. Um, but yeah, what is next for you in this season?
It's this world champions season.
Yeah,
So it's Nice in September and then Taupo, so the 70.3 worlds in December.
amazing. And clearly you're super high up on the Ironman World Series ranking. You are, I think, within 500 points of first. Something
Yes.
like that. Yeah. So,
Mhm.
second place right now. Held first place for a bit, and as races continue on, there's two big ones to go this season. How much of your focus right now is on the series and finishing as high up as possible?
I went into this year with a big focus on the series. I knew that it was one that was a really good opportunity for myself and just where my strengths lie as an athlete. And I was a little bit disappointed in how the first few races went because um, I, like we just talked about Texas, I was ready to have a good run there, but just my nutrition went completely sideways. Um, Ended up still getting my niece or my niece slot, which was obviously priority number one, but I missed out on a whole bunch of points there. And then in St. George, I had some like asthma issues. I actually am still doing some like work with my physician. I have a pulmonary test tomorrow, working on dialing that out. So that affected me in St. George, which was kind of stunk. And so, anyways,
Mhm.
I've put a little bit more pressure on myself going into Worlds if I do want to vie for the top spot in the pro series. Obviously, Lake Placid is a
Yeah.
huge thing in terms of points. But I'm gonna have to do some work in the next two races.
Yeah, and luckily, you have some time for those. So off week
Mhm.
this week, and then it's about 7 weeks
Mhm.
to
7 weeks.
Nice, and then you'll have another 2 months or so. No, 2.5 months.
Yeah, it's such a long time. I
It is
mean,
a
to
long
have a
time.
December world race, that's just ugh.
It's a long season for everybody this year.
I
Uh,
know.
but yeah, no, we're definitely cheering for you. It's been really fun, like I said, to follow your journey, especially over many years, not just this
Mm.
season. And I think what's really fun is just seeing more and more people being awakened to the athlete that you are, and just seeing the consistency in your performances too has been really cool. So yeah, and then your swim's progressing, which
Mm.
is always helpful.
That's all we need is progress, baby.
That's right. Well, great. Well, thanks so much for joining today. Tell Andrew I say hi. I always love when he comes up. He makes it a point to come up to every expo that we're at to say hi.
Mhm.
So tell him I say
Yeah,
hello.
yeah,
And also enjoy your rest. Hopefully you can get out and tube a little bit, float the
I
river.
will. I will. I will document it. I'm
Please
so
do.
excited.
Are you guys getting any of the smoke right now from Canada?
Well, see, well,
Or, I mean,
I
there's
don't
a
know
few
where
fires, but
there's a
yes.
lot going on over here in the Northwest. It's unfortunate. Yesterday, I had a doctor's appointment and I went outside. I left the house for like a few minutes and I'm like, what is going on? Like I can't, so we have mountains here in Boise. They're
Mhm,
not like huge, but like they're close by. They're
mhm.
just a few miles from the house. I couldn't see them. I had, and just being away, I wasn't following along that obviously we had fires in the area. And apparently also there was like ash falling from the sky in our
Whoa.
area. So like, and so when I was outside, I had like an instant headache. And thankfully today it's a little bit clearer out there. Hopefully this clears up soon though.
Yeah. Yeah, we don't have any fires here, but we have the haze. Like we can barely see the sun sometimes
Mm.
just because of how hazy it is. But yeah, you're a lot closer to it than we are. But anyway, hopefully it clears out soon and get back to training with clear lungs and clear air. So
Awesome.
we'll
Well, thanks
find.
so much, Brad. I appreciate you.
Appreciate you as well. And we'll tag your Instagram profile. Anything else that we can tag for you as for people to follow along with the
Yeah,
season?
Instagram's great. You know, social media, I always say it can be like gigapets. Remember gigapets from like the 90s? You probably didn't have any. It's probably more like a
No,
girl
yeah.
thing. Well, like you always have to feed them to make sure they stay alive, and you have like a whole bunch of like I like Instagram. I'm just gonna keep my one thing. I mean, I have a Facebook too, but just a little bit more active on Instagram. So
That's perfect. No, that works great. We will tag that and make sure people follow you because again, this is a big series this year, and you are right at the top. So it'll be fun to continue cheering for you as the seasons go.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Danny. Talk to you later.
Bye.